Another thing we want to do sometimes is make sure that the F9 event will only happen if this is the active controller. Let's explain the scenario. Currently, when we are in show orders, and let's press F9, we're going to get our message. But what if this message is only making sense in the context of show order? And if I'm somewhere else down the stack, it just doesn't make sense anymore. It's no longer relevant. And I don't want it to fire in any of my child controller. So this is where we'll use another parameter, another configuration. We can tell F9, or the handler for F9. We can see the second parameter for this method is HandlerScope. And here we can choose different scopes. The first scope is current context, which is the one we've seen. This controller and any child controller. The second one is current task only. And current task only means that only when this is the active task, I will get this event handled. So let's do this over here. Let's run our code. And demo handlers, and I'm going to say F9, and it will work perfectly. And if I go to a child controller and I press F9, nothing would happen. And that's because it's not on top of the stack. It's not the active controller. The active controller is show order details. So this handler, which is only relevant in the show orders context, is not relevant while I'm in the show orders detail. Okay, so that's why we're not getting that event handled. So let's just recap very quickly. We can do F8 over here, and we'll get the handler from the show orders detail. And since it's handled, it will not bubble up to the parent controller. We can press F10, and we'll get the show orders handler that is run over here. And that's because the default handler scope is current context, which means this controller and any controller below it. And if we press F9, we'll get nothing. As you can see, I'm clicking F9. And that's because F9 was determined as the current task only scope of the show orders controller. And if we go back to show orders, we'll press F8, we'll get the handler of F8, F9 because we're in the current scope, so that makes sense, and F10 because it's from this stack and all the code controllers from it. So to limit the scope, all we need to do is add another parameter of type HandlerScope and say current task only. Now there's another HandlerScope over here which is called something weird that I don't even remember the name. Let's see. Unhandled custom command in module, which is relevant for complex component scenario. If you want to read more about it, go to our documentation as it's clearly explained over here.